Hey everybody, it's Jessica and welcome back to the Ebonyscape, and today I'm continuing with the show of the rest of my art books, so art books part 2. And if you didn't watch my last video, you can definitely go and check out part 1 of me showing off my art books. And when I'm talking about an art book, I'm not just talking about a traditional art book where it's like the biographical information of an artist and all the artwork that they've made, but I'm also talking about books that just have art that inspire me. So we're going to include some of that today. Let's get into it. The first art book that I wanted to show you today was a book called The Color Teal, and it is from the artist Teal Duncan, and I love this book just because Teal Duncan's work, I would say, deals with like abstraction and post-impressionism. And the reason why I'd say post-impressionism is because when she is painting her works, she uses a lot of sharp geometric shapes that might not necessarily exactly mimic what something looks like naturally in real life. And she also uses a lot of vivid, bright colors that don't necessarily mimic what you would see with your naked eye, but it's really visually interesting and bright and captivating. And like her name, Teal, there are quite a few of her artworks that use the color teal, and this is one of her artworks on the cover. And I just love how impressionistic and post-impressionistic her art is. And some examples here, she has a lot of nude figures of females that she does, and she also has some figures of females reclining on the beach. And like you can see, this is obviously not what someone would look like if they were reclining on the beach, like as far as natural colors go, but she chooses these really beautiful unnatural colors like these blues and stuff like that to represent her skin tone, where the shadows are, where the light's coming from. And I think that her work is so beautiful, and I just love how she incorporates a lot of teal, a lot of like subdued tones that are like pastel as well, and she does a lot of that with her work. She also has a lot of work where she paints animals, and she still carries that impressionistic attitude with like the sharp lines and strokes and gestures that might not necessarily mimic real life, and especially the colors don't mimic real life and the colors that you would see on an animal like this sheep or this elephant up here. And there's a lot of these sharp geometric shapes, but it's so visually interesting and captivating, and I think her work is just beautiful and lovely. And in this book, you don't only see great examples of her work, you also get a taste of like her life and how she developed as an artist, how she got into art and her art journey, as well as her balancing that with her life outside of art. So you learn from her as an artist on like a biographical level, as well as an artist by just studying her work and looking at the things that she produces and her style and her taste. So I really appreciate it. And you can still get this book. It should still be in print, and it's a beautiful book and it's really fun. And if you love the color teal, post-impressionism, illustrations of figures and beaches and animals and with bright colors and like subdued pastels mixed in, this is definitely the book for you. So I would encourage you to get it. Now the next book that I have is The Art of Tangled, and I just love this book because it's Disney and it's Tangled. And in my last video, I showed you the book, The Art of the Spider-Verse, and this kind of has a similar vein in terms of taking you behind the scenes of making the story, developing the characters, some of the sequential art that was involved in the project as well. And I think it's so interesting because you see how a story like this can come together, and at such an interesting powerhouse like Disney, you can watch and see, oh, this is how we decided what the forest is going to look like, or what Flynn Rider's original character design is going to be, or what Rapunzel's original design is going to be. And it also shows you how they pulled from Rococo style and all of that kind of stuff to influence the design of the kingdom, design of Rapunzel and like her dress and stuff like that. And you have all these beautiful, interesting sketches trying to detail what Rapunzel's world could look like. Like here's some early drawings of like how Rapunzel draws on the walls, and you have her doodles and her paintings and illustrations that she makes, and you also have her in the midst of creating some illustrations here when she's up on the beams in the tower and everything. And it's so beautiful, and you get to see all these painterly strokes, and it makes it feel like you're going back into like a time of Rococo with like a lot of buttery strokes, and it's light and it's fluffy. Like here you can see some initial designs for what Flynn Rider could have looked like. And what's so interesting is he looked like he could have been, and I don't remember the guy's name now, but the guy from Frozen that Anna likes, likes. He was originally going to be bigger and buffer, but now he's got like more of this slim physique, and also this is a very interesting development as far as like his costume design goes. But all of that takes place when you're trying to tell a story, and that's why I find this book so interesting, not just because it's Tangled and it's Disney, but you get to see what happens. You get to see the process of what it takes in order to create a story, not just the development of like one character, but a whole world, and what that looks like and what that means for the viewer and all of that kind of stuff, and how to best tell that story. And so I love this book, and I think it's so interesting. My favorite part is actually this design of how the land is laid out. And I don't know the technical term for it, but when you look at the kingdom, you get this sense of like a compressed background and like this movie poster, and I'll put it up if I can find it. But it actually inspired me when I was designing the cover of my book, Guardians of Massive Memory, because I loved how there was like a compressed sense of setting. What I really liked was like this compressed sense of background, so that you could get a sense of scope for the whole world that Rapunzel was living in, so that you could see the kingdom, the forest, and the tower all in one place, so that you could see that it was different worlds but all in one place as far as the story was concerned and as far as Rapunzel's life was concerned. So I loved how that was portrayed, and I tried to take some of that into the design for my book cover, Guardians of Massive Memory. And I was really interested in how they designed the nature of the land so that you knew exactly where you were going. Like here, you can see a design of the land. So the tower is way back here and the kingdom is way down here. So you can actually see the journey that Rapunzel and Flynn take to get from A to B. And it's so interesting to me to be able to look at how this landscape was designed. And you got like a slice of it, so you can see, oh, it's really hilly up here, and then we're getting more to like flatlands and getting to like the ocean down here. And that was really interesting for me, especially since I wanted to make a compressed background. And I really loved how they showed us the map of where the story goes. So this is definitely an inspiring book, and it's really beautiful, and it shows you not just like the digital art that takes place when trying to create a story like this as far as sequential art goes, but there's a lot of like traditional textures, like whether the artists are using a digital brush that mimics pencil or whether they're actually using traditional pencils and paints and stuff like that. You get a lot of that in this book, so it kind of makes you think of older traditional art that you would see from Disney animations that used a lot of traditional art in order to create like a traditional animation. So it really gives you that feel as well. And again, with like the painting styles that were used for some of the early art, it really gives you like this Rococo feel. So it really feels like old-timey fairy tale. And so it's really fun, and it's great to look at if you want to get a sense of world building and a sense of character design. You can definitely pick up this book and you'll have a great time reading it. Now, the next book that I have, I'm very excited about, and it is Nema from Ross Tran. He has a YouTube channel called Ross Draws, and I've been watching that for a few years now, and he was one of my big motivating factors for getting me into digital art. And I love this book because, again, I love world building, and one of the things that I'm interested in is creating a big sense of scope for creating different worlds and doing that from different perspectives. But one of the perspectives that I want to include is like the perspective of that of an illustrator. So with Ross's book, he is focused on the story and the character Nema, and you can see her here. And in this book, you don't only just have great examples of the art that Ross has made, because the thing that's so interesting about his work is you can look at his work and you get this very painterly feel, even though he's a digital artist. So what's so interesting is he uses a lot of big expressive strokes that kind of make you think of like Impressionism or Post-Impressionism, and you can tell like, oh, that's a paint stroke. Like he's not trying to blend this to death, but he's giving you a nice sense of form, and he's giving you a nice sense of shape and he's making his work feel painterly because of how big and expressive his strokes are. And I really like that. And you can see that here even when you look at Nema, because you can tell, oh, this is a stroke and this is a stroke, but he's giving you a sense of form, and like, this is where the light's hitting, this is where the cloak is curving and all of that. And I think it's so beautiful. And in addition to all the illustrations that he includes in the book, he also has the story alongside the illustrations, and you get a sense of who Nema is, what her purpose is, all the other characters in her world and the relationships that she has with them. And we also get a sense of understanding of what it means to operate in this world that he's created, the importance of symbols that he's come up with, and these other supporting characters that seem just as interesting in their design and their backstory. So you really get not just a sense of really good art, but a sense of how to create a really interesting and compelling story. So I love this book because not only do you get a feast for your eyes as far as art is concerned, you also get a really good sense of how to create a big sense of scope for world building and creating a story with your art, if that's what you want to do as far as your path is concerned as an artist or a storyteller. And that is definitely one of the things that I want to do. So looking at this book is really encouraging because it shows you how you can do that, and it shows how detailed he's gotten, because he has all this interesting text aligned up with each character, like maybe why they dress a certain way, different headshots of them, early development sketches of them, and each one is really clear and distinct as far as their costumes go or their clothing goes, hairstyles, all of this different stuff. It's just so interesting, and you can tell he put in a lot of work with each of these characters and the story that he created for each of them. And again, if we're just gonna go back to the art, like, you can see that he's not blending this to death. Like, he wants you to know this is a highlight for where the hair is, and here's the shape and form, so you can tell it's coming forward in space or it's falling backward in space. And I just love how bold he is with his strokes. And I would love to incorporate that more into my practice and not feel like I need to blend everything in, but that I could be more bold with my strokes. So if you are wanting to learn how to not just create great characters and create a great sense of world building, but incorporate that into your art practice alongside that, then I would definitely recommend Nema. And even if you just want to get it just so that you could read the story and enjoy it and not as an artist, I would still tell you to go get it. It's a fun book. It's really great. And on top of that, Ross has like a lot of tutorials and brushes and videos available on YouTube. And he was definitely integral to my art practice and what it meant for me as far as what my process would look like as a digital artist. So if you're looking to get into digital art and you want someone of the bright ray of sunshine variety that comes with positivity, then you should definitely check out Ross. Now, the last book that I have today is Parker Looks Up. And if you don't know, this story is by Parker Curry and Jessica Curry. And Parker is this little girl that was walking in a museum, and she saw Michelle Obama's portrait, and she was just enraptured, and she was just looking up at the portrait, and she just looked like she'd seen, I don't know, like she'd seen the glory, like she'd seen a queen, and she just couldn't stop looking at it. And so her and her mother wrote this story, and it's illustrated by Brittany Jackson. And I really love this story, not just because the story is so precious and encouraging, but because Brittany Jackson's style for her illustrations is really compelling to me. She also has bold strokes in her work as well. So when she's showing Parker and her friend in the museum, like, this is an illustration of Einstein, and I really like how bold her strokes are. Like, you can see this is where the cheekbone is, and here's the shadows, and she's not being shy about it, and she hasn't blended it to death. She's very bold in telling you about the planes of the face, where shadow is, where light is, giving you form and how something looks in space. And I really appreciate that about her work. And I think it's so beautiful, and it's such a lovely way to tell this story. But then when you get to the portrayal of Michelle Obama, I just think this is so beautiful. Like, I love how she came in with the shadows and gave you a nice sense of form to tell you, okay, this is where the light's hitting, this is how her face looks in space, and how we're getting the sharp definition of her cheekbones and the hair and stuff like that, and how she decided to use this like red highlight. It complements like this pink ribbon well, so it kind of gives you an idea that the light here is reflecting that of the ribbon. And I just really love how she gives us these bold strokes. She gives us just enough blending so that we can see like a nice transition between colors, but she doesn't do it so much that we can't see the form and that it gets muddled or anything like that. She gives me like a light impressionist kind of feel. Like her work still feels painterly, even though she's using a digital art software to create these works or to create these illustrations. And so I love the way that her illustrations look, and they just look so fun and youthful and playful, and it's giving me like this nice painterly feel. So I really love this book. So if you are looking for like something that's digital art but it still gives you like a painterly feel, and it's kind of like giving you a hint of like some post-impressionism, I would definitely encourage you to pick up this book. And also, if you're just looking for some inspiration from a very precious moment that turned into a beautiful story, I would also encourage you to get Parker Looks Up. So those are all my art books for now, but if you have any art books that you think are interesting, you think I should know about, definitely let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe and comment below with what your favorite art book was, and I hope you keep creating and keep escaping. Bye guys.